Hello and welcome to Perspectives, where we'll take a deep dive into the issues of the day and where we'll take a look at people's opinions on such issues. I am Ruth Osime. Welcome back to Perspectives here on Arise News. In recognition of June as Men's Mental Health Month, we're pulling back the curtain on a subject that too many men face, but too few of them ever talk about: depression. Whether in boardrooms or bedrooms, in their roles at work, in family or in society, men are expected to be strong, unshaken, and always in control, even when they are silently falling apart. But what happens when the silence begins to scream and the mask begins to crack? This isn't a mere dialogue, it's a deep reckoning. A reckoning with the quiet wars waged behind confident smiles, the pressure of performance, and the battles to stay afloat in a culture that tells men when the going gets tough, the tough get going. I'll be joined today on Perspectives by three men, each shaped by the storm of mental struggle. One who found healing through therapy, another who turned wellness into his weapon, and a third who runs a sanctuary for others to heal. Together, they reflect different paths, but one shared mission: helping men choose life over silence. This is a fireside chat where egos are left at the door and truth sits on the table. What you will hear today isn't weakness, it is courage, it's clarity, it's the kind of honesty that saves lives, not just for the men who speak, but for the ones who are still silent. We're heading for a short break, but stay with us because in the brief moment, the conversation shall be underway with my very wonderful guests, Deyemi Okonlawon, who we're still expecting, Maje Ayida, and Mfon Etuk. Perspectives will return in just a moment. Welcome back to Perspectives here on Arise News. Let's now usher in our guests, starting with Deyemi Okonlawon, who is yet to arrive, who is a celebrated Nigerian film, TV, theatre, and voice actor, widely regarded as Nollywood's most versatile performer. He is the most featured Nigerian and African actor in Netflix originals, known for standout roles. He was Nollywood's highest-grossing actor in 2020 and 2021, and is among the industry's top earners. Also on the show with me is Maje Ayida, a renowned wellness coach and CEO of Eden Lifestyle. He's also recognized for championing corporate wellness and youth fitness through his popular radio show and national school initiatives. A MIPAD 100 honoree, he has led Lagos State's Keep Fit campaign and collaborated with global organizations, including the WHO, Unilever, and British Airways. And last but certainly not the least on the panel is Mfon Etuk, who is a cognitive behavioral therapist and lead counselor at ME Counseling Services. He works with boys and men on emotional healing, serves on the ethics board of ANEPCO, African Network of Professional Counselors, and lectures at ADCCPN, Attitude Development International College of Counseling and Psychotherapy. It's a great pleasure to have all of you here on Perspectives. As you know, we're still expecting development. But just before we get into the conversation, let's spare a minute or two to listen to one of my guests and my friend, Maje Ayida, addressing the subject of the day. We will be right back.
Be honest about the fact that I went through a divorce and it resulted in me being in the press a lot.
So it was a well-publicized divorce?
Very publicized. And that left me feeling very alone. I withdrew from society. Wow. I was really ashamed of my situation. I felt ashamed not just for myself. Self-esteem was affected, but also legacy is very important to me. I was ashamed of what I had done to my family name, or what I felt I had done. And as a result, I literally went into hiding.
Wow.
But
what does hiding mean?
I didn't want to interact with anyone. I wanted to stay in my own space, stay at home.
Did you go to work? You stopped going to work?
I found it very difficult to work.
Wow.
It was very hard.
You began to lose focus?
Not just lose focus, lose motivation.
Wow.
Lose the incentive to even get up in the morning.
Wow.
What am I getting up for? Everyone already feels a certain way about me, and so on. I started to lose work as a result of it. That's when it really started to get to me. As a man, your work is your identity. And I started to lose opportunities. I started to lose business deals. So it became a real problem for me.
Wow.
That's where I made a decision. I literally had to make a decision for my own survival because I was living in hopelessness.
How long did this go on for?
Weeks. It went on for weeks.
Yeah.
I was out of the loop for a whole year. I checked out of life for a year.
My God.
To regroup and realize that I was in a very dark space. I was in a hole, but I needed to get out of it.
You see, that's what I'm saying. This might be the most powerful message. You will wonder, how come I'm not fighting in business? And the reason why is that your soul is defeated and crushed and your passion is gone. You will think you don't like ministry again. You love ministry, but you've been crushed. And so you are not motivated to do something. What was your lowest time when you were depressed? Did you cry?
Oh, wow. I was on the floor.
Could you sleep sometimes?
No, sleep. What sleep? I didn't even know what that was. I had insomnia. I was paranoid as well. So the few chances that I did get to go out, I had created a scenario in my own mind that everybody knows, everybody's talking about me, people are looking at me, and that would just send me back straight into my own home.
Wow.
So, so that feeling of hopelessness and the noise that was going on around me, even though I was in silence,
wow,
was insane.
Wow. How did you come out of this?
That's where it gets interesting. Like I said, I made a choice. I decided that I didn't want to stay in this space. I did research. That's what I did.
You did research?
I researched
so you never
how
blamed
to deal
yourself,
with this.
You never blamed your partner?
No, what I did was, the top of the list of the research that I did was accountability. I took the blame on myself.
So you blamed yourself?
Yes,
100%. And that makes you feel worse and guilty, right?
It made me feel worse at first, actually.
Until you began to do something about it.
Exactly.
Thank you.
And I began to take practical steps.
Maje, how did it feel to watch that? From where you are now to where what you saw there, how does it feel?
I'll point out that I was talking about experiences that I had over a decade ago.
Yes.
You know, and that segment was actually, I think, about 2 years back. But watching it again, especially this month being Men's Mental Health Month, it was very interesting to see the reactions because, I mean, it was all over the internet, right? Yes. And of course, with that, you see a lot of comments. But what intrigued me was, A, how it polarized people, but also how it highlighted the stigma that we still face as men with mental health and being vulnerable, seeking help, and the association of seeking help with weakness.
But did that reflect in some of the comments that you saw?
Oh, absolutely. Because
what kind of comments did they make?
Overwhelmingly, there was still so much shaming going on.
Wow.
And this is precisely the reason why men find it so difficult to reach out for help, which is what, honestly, this whole month should be about. I wish we had more than a month. You know, I wish it was the narrative that it's okay to seek help and it's okay not to be okay, but the truth is, it still isn't. So there's still so much work to do for us as wellness practitioners, and for so much for people to learn, education-wise, to learn with empathy, to learn about understanding, and about creating safe spaces. So it's not just for men. It's for men and for women, because we have to support each other.
It's interesting that you mentioned this, and which is why I particularly asked what kind of comments you got from men. Because even today, I think it's very appealing when a man can cry, express his emotions, and be confident in. I see it as a sign of strength. But you know, you and I were talking earlier on, yesterday or whenever, and you said that no, that's most times women perceive men who cry, they see it as a sign of weakness. I'm surprised to hear that.
I will say it. It's unfortunate, and that's not saying that all women are like that.
Yeah.
You know, of course, but it's still a reality that even though women may seek communication, vulnerability, and emotions from men, unfortunately, a lot of women are put off by that and actually view that as weakness. And attraction, out the window. Respect, out the window. And this is the reality. Really?
Yeah, because I would have, maybe because one has gotten older and more mature. Do you understand? I would have thought that a man that can be confident enough to cry is showing you his most vulnerable side, and that in itself makes him more attractive and more endearing to you as a woman. But let's bring in Mfon. Now, you obviously, I want to know your take on this double standard that we have in society, and then. Secondly, why you created your spa? Okay. What inspired it?
Okay.
And what are the what's the negativity surrounding mental health that you want to use your oasis to correct?
Yeah. Okay. So first, I really commend you for how coming out of it really, because it's always very tragic, mostly for men, especially when it's out there in the world, society, everyone is aware of it. And truly, the double standards are there. Women would expect a strong man. You hear people say, or women say, I want a man who is able to express his emotions and, be an all-round man, but that involves him being vulnerable to you. And like you rightly said, it's a turn-off for some women. Some wives can't even stand their men being vulnerable,
That's so unfair, because we're all humans.
Exactly, so it's frustrating for the men, so they end up bottling it up, unable to, and men have very few support systems, and that's where we now come in at Revive Oasis. So it's an outfit where we deal with mental health and everything associated with mental health. We try to help people go through and survive every form of mental health issue that you can think of, from depression to anxiety, to substance abuse, and every other thing you can think about. So Revive Oasis, that was where it came out from. The chairman actually had this vision and wanted to set up something, but did not know how to go about it. And that's where we came into the picture and helped, since we are professionals in that aspect, and we helped set up that. And apart from that, I am also, being in the industry, a trained psychologist and all counseling psychologist. And so we help people, with mental health and every form of aspects of that issue.
Okay, I want to ask, let me get to Maje first.
Yeah.
Back to Maje. Maje, you've spoken about exercise, and you've said that also does help, emotional exercise. What exactly do you mean by that?
I spoke about emotional fitness.
Okay, emotional fitness, yes.
And I use the analogy of exercise because just like with fitness, it's something that you have to keep doing. You don't just go to the gym one time, exercise, and you're fit and that's it. You have to maintain, you have to keep exercising. And there's so many benefits that come with that. And it's the same thing with your emotional fitness, your mental fitness, building resilience. It's something that you work on every day. You train every day, because I think in today's world, we are moving more towards emotional fragility and away from building resilience. And, going back to what you said about men, we also have work to do. It's not just about being received and our vulnerability being received. I think we are expected to be leaders, to be strong, to be stoic, which means that we also need to learn how to regulate our own emotions, how to process our emotions, because emotions are real. But the reality is how we feel about our emotions, what we do about our emotions. That's where the work is.
That takes a lot of conditioning.
How we express it, and that's what requires the training. So you show up in the world anchored as your best self, centered, focused, and with clarity.
Yeah, but what about the warning signs? How do you get it? I mean, you've spoken about, let's talk about your peers now, for instance. Sure. Hardworking, aggressive, 24/7, they're on the phone, they're doing business deals back to back, they still have to have time for their wives, still have to have time for the children, and all this pressure is put upon them. And like both of you rightfully said, society is very harsh on men. Yeah. So before it gets to the stage where they now break down totally, how do they learn to draw back and spend me time? I mean, literally describe it like on a daily basis, for instance.
Sure. I mean, yes, the pressures on men are immense. And really, we're told we have one job, provide or get out.
Yeah.
So we, again, need to, well, I'll talk about myself. What I do is I leverage exercise. I use fitness to access my own mental health. So I will anchor myself in routines of exercise. For example, I wake up in the morning, I'm not reaching for my phone, I'll spend at least 30 to 40 minutes exercising, meditating, in prayer, but sitting with myself, with my own thoughts before I allow the world to come in, helping me to anchor myself. Building that routine of exercise and the discipline required for it, again, sets yourself up for success. Because if you can discipline yourself to achieve that, it starts to cascade into other areas of your life as well. So focus as men on what you can control, which is your response. And you talked actually about what are the signs that you see, okay?
So before you get to what are the signs you can see, you're single. I'm assuming,
as in unmarried.
I haven't heard that you're married yet. So you probably have more luxury of time to do that 40 minutes seclusion, getting, me time. What about a married man with kids, with a wife? And they don't have that luxury. So how can he create his own space?
Fair. Well, you're assuming that I don't have kids, which I do.
Oh, you do, actually.
Yes.
Sorry. That's true.
So, and you're assuming that perhaps I'm not busy, which I am. So
I
the
didn't
fact
assume.
is,
I just assume. I'm just saying that your lifestyle might be
it's
slightly different.
It's about prioritizing.
Exactly.
Okay, and I prioritize my health. Because at the end of the day, you could have all the problems in the world, but once your health fails, you have one problem. That's it. So I'll again circle back to the warning signs. I talked about it in the video, things like insomnia, feelings of hopelessness, chronic sadness, chronic anger. And one of the things, or one of the ways that emotions manifest in men, and it disguises a lot of things, is in anger. And that's probably the one emotion that's recognized and allowed for men, is anger. But what is it masking? What is behind it? And that's where you start to see that people are actually grappling out there at life. There is a thing called high-functioning depression, which I know you're aware of, which is people who are meeting life across the board. They're paying their bills, they're showing up, right? Successful by any means, by any standards, but struggling. And these men end up unaliving themselves. There is a mental health crisis right now because we are losing men. And if we don't educate and create spaces for conversations and support in communities, because we are communal beings. We need each other. Men need each other.
Society is so harsh on men.
One of the comments I saw was from a guy who said, "Oh, this man is weak. It's weakness." Do you know what I mean?
After all, you have so much. So what are you upset about?
Absolutely, and this is where the education really comes in to show people, because that man himself, I'm sorry, but I feel your opinions of the world are also a confession of character. That's a person that's going through something. I'll let you speak, sir.
No, first and foremost, I have to apologize. I didn't mean that you're not as busy. I just said your lifestyle, because you're so trained. You are a specialist in what you do. A lot of men might not have the same discipline that you have.
I find it hard.
You do? Even up to now?
Yes, exactly. That's why I say it's important to build routines and habits.
Yeah, but one would have thought that someone like you...
I don't actually enjoy going to the gym.
No way.
I don't like it. What I do like...
No way. But you're an exercise, fitness, whatever.
I've changed my lens. I like how it makes me feel.
Are you serious?
Right? So I focus on how I feel, whether I'm energized, what my mood is like. So I pay attention to how it makes me feel, and that's what makes me show up. That's what gets me going. And I've created the habit of exercising anywhere in my own space. So the gym is not even a barrier for me. I exercised this morning at home before I came
that's
here.
Interesting to know.
But that's why I say, before you pick up your phones and allow stress to start coming in, sit with yourself, move more. Build your day from that foundation.
That's picking up phone. I mean, even now I'm guilty of that.
There's a phrase I have: sunlight before screen light.
Wow.
Okay. Sunlight before screen light. Sit with yourself. Let your insides guide you.
Okay.
Trust yourself, not what the world is dictating to you.
Anyway, we're going to take a break now. So before I get on to you, Mfon. So we're taking a quick break. Go grab a cup of tea, as I said. Enjoy the rain and join us back on Perspectives. Welcome back to Perspective. So let's get straight to Mfon. Mfon, there are different services available in this oasis, in your wellness spa. Can you tell us what services are involved and who? And you also apparently use outside therapists as well.
Yes, we do.
So tell us how that works.
Okay, so we have basically, we deal with depression, we deal with mental health issues, we deal with grief recovery, we deal with marital issues, that's marriage and family therapy. We have therapies too for children counseling. We have the earth therapy, which is a situation where you connect with earth, as in the pure sand, the wind, and
Is that
nature.
the Zen area?
Well, not really the Zen. It's more like grounding therapy. So you connect with
What does
nature.
that do? What does grounding?
It helps. It reduces stress and it helps one relax.
How does
helps
it work?
one calm.
Give us an example.
Okay, let me ask, Brenda, when was the last time you walked barefoot on the ground, soil, earth? It's almost, most of us have
what
not
does
done
that
it.
do for you?
Yeah, that's the thing. So the body neutralizes the earth, helps the body neutralize the positive electrons.
Are you serious?
Yes, ma'am. And it helps us relax. So it improves sleep.
What about people that walk on the streets? Are they relaxed?
Well, not with their barefoot. If with their barefoot, yes, it also has an importance for them. It could be out of like suffering, but the truth is, what it's doing to your body, you can't compare it to.
Are you serious?
Yes, so it's
Is that
necessary.
why people in the village age much
Well,
longer?
yes, they live longer because they are going through. That's a natural form of therapy. So we have that earthing therapy too, and basically every form. We have acupuncture and the massage therapy. All these things would help one relax. And Lagos is a very stressful environment, I tell people. I tell people the mental health that is acceptable in Lagos, in many other cities of the world, it's not acceptable. Take, for instance, you see someone on the road and they start screaming at each other and they're like, trying to...
Road rage.
Road rage, kind of like. In Lagos, you would see that like, if you don't do that, you're going to be taken for granted or something. And it's acceptable, kind of. But you take it to somewhere else and come on, man, it's something one shouldn't even do. Now, I'm not supporting it, but I'm just talking about the way our environment affects our mental health. Those of us in Lagos here, we really have a whole lot of things to do concerning our mental health, and we need to deal with it. So at Revive Oasis, we help people go through that, relaxing, getting through stress, and every form of emotional issues they may experience.
Let me ask one question, and I want to throw the question at both of you.
Yeah.
You've spoken about the pressure that men go through and, emotional tools that men need to break free from toxic masculinity and survival mode.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Usually, how long? I know it's not the same route for everybody, but on average, how long should it take from when you go through this mental health and when you get back to a good place mentally?
Okay.
On average.
Let me speak like from the aspect of probably grief recovery. Now, depending on what you lost. Now, when we talk about grief, the first thing that comes to people's head is bereavement. That's the loss of a person, and all. But during lockdown, people lost their jobs. People lost their livelihood. People lost their businesses. People lost their sense of freedom, their sense of, movement and all. So for grief, there's no timeline. You could grieve for a lifetime. So when some people say, oh, maybe a woman lost the husband and you see her a year after and she's probably still mourning, some people say things like, you should get over him by now, and it's over a year. It's very insensitive.
It's when they say time heals.
Exactly. You hear people say such things. I don't blame them. They don't know better. But the truth is, there's no timeline for it. Now, if you're talking about mental health issues, it all, like he said, he was intentional. He did the research. He worked on it. Now, if you're seeing a therapist, it depends on the issue, the prevailing issues.
What if it's not grief related? What if it's not death related?
Exactly.
But it's just that, because mental health, I don't know, is it also a form of imbalance?
It will cause imbalance in the long run, if not dealt with.
No, but there must be physically something wrong with you mentally.
Not physically something wrong with you mentally, no. It boils down to the emotions, how you express it, and how you deal with it.
Okay, but what about people who seem to have it all?
Have every form of mental health
Let me
issue.
ask you that. Okay. Because, we've heard of people who have it all. Good job, good wife, good children, everything works. Everything on the surface looks okay. And then the person also better still, or the people better still even have good monies and live fantastic lives. We've also heard about actors and actresses. I don't know whether you know one dancer, one very popular American dancer.
Yes, I know.
That was dancing with his wife the day before, and the next day, exactly. and the next day he
Unalived
died.
himself.
Unalived himself. So that's what I'm saying, apart from this typical
Stressful
environment of grief, there are also people who seem so okay on the outside.
Yeah.
What's that man's name again? Robin Williams, or what was his name again? The actor.
Okay, yeah.
He also committed suicide.
Yeah.
So in such cases, do you understand? What do you need to correct for them to get back to the way they once were? For them to not end up committing suicide? And even when they get better, what about relapses? What happens?
First of all, the narrative around mental health, why it's so stigmatized is because a lot of people associate it with extreme cases, extreme depression, suicide, right? Real grief, mourning. But truly, it's the day-to-day existence, day-to-day struggle is your mental health. Normal, everyday challenges, all part of your mental health. And it's very hard to see. Depression is faceless. It is nameless, okay? It doesn't show on people. That's why it's important to just practice things like empathy, practice things like self-awareness, things like community, checking on people, reaching out to people, self-care, giving yourself the best chance, because it comes at you every day. Lagos is basically anti-wellness. It is an attack on the senses on a daily basis. You wake up and you've received 3 slaps from Lagos before your day even starts.
Lagos happened to you, as they say.
It happens to you. So
But Nigeria happens to you.
You have to prepare yourself. I talked about this on a podcast yesterday. I have a mindset of pre-prepared patience, where you are preparing yourself. Every day you wake up in the morning, you speak to yourself in the mirror, your affirmations, but prepare yourself for challenge, because that is promised in life. But what is also promised is that you have the emotional resilience to cope with whatever it's going to throw at you. That's why you root yourself in routines, in habits, in exercise, in discipline, to give yourself the best chance. You could get up and get hit by a bus. Anything could happen. But you just give yourself the best chance. So it's hard to see, but you look for tells, you look for signs. Like I mentioned already, things like chronic sadness, people that maybe stop showing up in the way that they do. Somebody who's continually angry all the time. There's something going on. All you got to do is caringly and non-judgmentally ask questions, reach out, check on people.
But there's some that conceal it so well. Because I remember a friend of mine who said her 80-year-old father, who had a lot of swagger and was a generally happy-go-lucky person, was living, they all lived abroad, and she was supposed to go and visit him, I think the next day. But his wife went to see him and found him, he had hung himself. And there was no sign, nothing.
Do you know?
Sure, that's what I'm saying.
Absolutely,
Is there a
high-functioning depression.
High-functional depression is talking about.
Yeah, but is there a biological, I don't know actually, I'm not medical, but is there something,
kind of
is there a biological thing that makes that happen?
I would say it's the way they deal with issues and the interpretations they give to whatever issues they face.
Okay,
That's
so
what leads
it has
to
nothing to do with your build-up.
Well, some are kind of like hereditary in a way, in the sense that if
that's true, because there are some people that have
there are
that.
some, there are some families, there are some that are prone to those mental health issues, but generally,
so that means there's a biological link.
Yeah, I would say so, but I'm not going to go. I'm not a psychiatrist, so I'm not going to go into that. But what I'm trying to say is the interpretation they give to whatever issues they meet. Now, if you're talking about depression, it makes you lose interest in every other thing. So things that you used to like. But the high functional depression is the crazy one because it doesn't show. So you see people. But one thing I've also realized is that people that tend to make so many other people happy and laugh a lot, they're going through depression. Yes.
Yeah, that's true. If you hear a lot of comedians abroad.
So for them, it's like a coping mechanism. So you see them, and it's lovely, they're all doing good, they're fine and everything, but they're going through a lot. And it's not going to show.
And they conceal that with the happy-go-lucky attitude.
Yes. Exactly. So that's something to watch out for. Apart from the one that makes people hide, because you're going to lose interest in everything. If you loved eating, you're not going to eat anymore. If you loved sleeping, there's no sleep. And it could also be the reverse. If you never used to eat before, you now start eating a whole lot. That's what depression does. If you never used to sleep, you now start sleeping. So it's like, the reversal of whatever.
Substance abuse as well.
Okay, I was just going to say.
That's a very
like,
strong one.
that's where some people try to cope and they introduce the substance. They use it as a coping mechanism to make them forget the issues they have. You know, so substance, alcohol, sex, could be anything at all.
And the most prevalent one that we have here, alcohol consumption.
Exactly.
You look at a city as stressful as Lagos and has such a robust nightlife. There's a disconnect. Something's going on that people are trying to cope with in the nightlife. Something needs to be looked at. Things need to change. And it takes, you know, stakeholders working together, even at the government level.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Things like Men's Mental Health Month should be broadcasted. There should be education. There should be things. You should have Fitness Friday nationwide. You know, things that get people moving. Understanding, do you know that your own body, through exercise, releases endorphins that are as powerful as antidepressants?
Wow.
But yet we are out here medicating ourselves. Medicating ourselves. The first thing, a lot of psychologists do that as well. Go and see a psychologist, they'll throw medicine at you. Doctor, throw medicine at you. You don't even need that. You just go to the pharmacy, collect medicine, anything, medicine. But are you exercising? Are you eating right? Are you sleeping enough? Are you managing stress effectively with the way you process your own perspective? These are things that are important. You've got to ask yourself those questions in how you're showing up in life. One of the biggest unalivers of the elderly is loneliness. And do you know how many people are out there in this world of social media that are lonely, that feel they have connections through social media, but are actually so alone in the world, but still showing up?
I think
these are the warning signs.
This is a major role.
Massive role.
Media is kind of like their
Massive
coping
role.
Wrong
mechanism.
perception
So they
and
go
all of that.
there to kind of like relieve the
Escapism.
loneliness. Yes,
Exactly.
you know, so they dwell on it and stay there, and you hear people spending hours and everything. But like you rightly said, if we try to encourage and let people understand that exercises are good, you know, so we have aerobics at our place, Revival Horses. We have so you come in there and, you know, help move your body and everything. It makes you feel better at the end of the day. You know, especially in Lagos where you have traffic and all and everything. What we need the most is movement. You know, because they say sitting down is now the new cigarettes. You know, so
Absolutely.
movement and every form of, you know, proper
Yeah, you spoke
thoughts
about
and
that.
all. Yeah, it helps a whole lot.
You need to move all day.
You spoke about movement
Hit your
in the plane
steps.
and what have you.
I'm religious to hitting 10,000 steps every day. I'm religious to standing every hour, wherever I am, for at least 2 minutes. Movement is life. That's the reality. Food is medicine. Making the right food choices, jealously protecting the amount of sleep that you get because it is so important to your health, and exercising because of what it does for you, the self-esteem that it builds in you. Okay? All these things are all about just giving yourself the best chance in a world that is constantly trying to take from you. The world is making withdrawals from you. People are making, you talk about people that give a lot, that are so happy, make other people feel good. They are getting withdrawn from every day. So you have to put deposits back in yourself. And those are in the choices that you make. And you must be so intentional about this because we're not here to just survive, right? We're here to thrive, enjoy this life, enjoy this journey. So that even if you go through hardship, you go through difficult times and challenges, you don't stay there. You don't sit in that because you're actively working on yourself to bring yourself out of these spaces and keep moving forward.
It's good that you say that because I know that another challenge that men have with mental health is the ability to discuss it, especially with their spouses.
Yeah.
Why do men find it so difficult to let their spouses or loved ones know that, look, I am not that perfect man. I have my issues and I need to address them. How do we begin to change that narrative?
Okay, I think the first thing we have to understand it's as a result of the stigma. Now, this stigma is not just from outsiders, unfortunately. Even within your own home, the stigmatization based on the understanding of your spouse and probably your siblings, your brothers, your parents, and the rest of them. Some people relate a man crying to weakness. And I always tell people, if it was weakness, for those of us that are Christians, we understand. There's a place in the Bible where Jesus wept. And weeping is like a higher level of crying. So if our Lord and Savior would weep, so why then would we relate it, to weakness? So men, when you now tell something to your spouse out of your being vulnerable, and it's being brushed off at times, such men close up. They find it hard.
Thrown back at you.
Exactly,
In an argument.
exactly.
I'm going to ask you another question concerning faith, but we're going on the break right now. So don't go anywhere. We'll see you right back on Perspectives. Okay, welcome back to Perspectives. So let's get back again to what we were saying. You know, before we were talking about faith. Do you think, how well a role do you think faith plays in getting over mental health issues?
Or learning to live with.
Or learning to live with
health
mental
issues, learning to balance things out. I think it's a very, very important part of things. I mean, it was instrumental for me, going to church. First of all, the community that I got in church was just irreplaceable. But also because I spoke about a feeling of hopelessness, which is something that is quite common with people going through deep depression, right? There's a real feeling of hopelessness. There's just no way out. Almost like you're followed around by a cloud.
Engulfed.
You know? Yeah, and what faith does, you see the light at the end of the tunnel. You know, the way forward. There's a quiet reassurance that you're gonna get through this. It's gonna be okay. You're gonna bounce back. And I see that a lot. Look, the work I do, we provide employee assistance programs. It's called EAP to corporates in Nigeria. So I deal with a lot of organizations and deal with a lot of employees and see the kind of things that they are going through. And these are employees from, you know, oil companies, banks, wherever, across the board, across various industries, and what people are struggling with and fighting with. And honestly, it is so hard out there. People are going through so much. Faith can sometimes actually just be a lifeline. And having that belief that things are going to be okay, you're going to get through it, but then actively working on building yourself back up with taking the steps that we've talked about during this show.
It's good that you mentioned faith, but I want to now ask you, Mfon, what about people who don't have faith, who are not Christians, for instance? And
you can have faith and not be Christian.
Well, yes, true. Yeah. But don't believe in religion or don't believe in a superior, in a higher power. Yeah. Do you understand? So do you think affirmation alone is ever enough to pull such people out of deep emotional struggle?
Well, yeah, the truth is those affirmations is actually a faith in something. So faith is actually believing in something. You know, so yeah, those affirmations will help them. But those that don't even do those affirmations and don't believe in anything, you're not a Christian, you're not a Muslim, you're not even a Buddhist or even African,
an atheist.
You don't believe in anything, it's a little more difficult because the truth is you're trying to do it all by yourself. And that's where the problem is.
Are you saying it's impossible?
It's tougher. It's not impossible. Nothing is impossible. You could, but it's a little more difficult, you know, because when you're dealing with like the Christian faith, I know the Bible talks about, in the world you will find trials and tribulations, but in Christ you will find peace. And it also says that God will see you through whatever issues you're going through. So with all those affirmations, you know, in the Bible, and with the support system found in Christendom, in the church and all, it makes life a little easier, you know. You can see someone who's probably gone through it, who would help you. You know, there's something in that community, you know, so that's where we do group therapy sessions. You know, people that have the similar issues, we gather them together and they express themselves. Some will be in varying degrees. Some are closer to getting over it. Some are just starting. Those that have, you know, survived a little more can help those that are just starting, you know. So that brotherhood is needed. Yeah, so the group therapy sessions in our outfit helps a whole lot. So,
okay, what have you learned?
Community is so important. Yes. Sorry, please continue.
No, you wanted to say something?
No, I just said it. Okay. Community is so important and we need to really sort of highlight that.
Okay, but what have you learned about peace and vulnerability and the courage to stay now that you're in a better place?
What have I learned about peace and vulnerability? I've learned that it's important to work on yourself to have those things. I think it's important to believe in yourself, to build up your own self-esteem, to research, to learn about yourself,
so
learn who you are.
Are you constantly researching?
I'm constantly working on myself. I think that's just the point. I think the journey of self-discovery, of self-mastery is a lifelong journey. I think you're always evolving, always developing, always growing and learning new things. I think the day that you stop living is the day that you stop being curious. Curious about life, curious about yourself. So I'm always trying to learn.
Curiosity has to be kept alive.
There's a great show that I watched called Ted Lasso. And it's a beautiful line in there where he just said, be curious. And I think that is probably the one most important traits of successful living. It's just being curious about people, interested in who you are, what you do, why you're here, the why. What is your why? What is your reason for existence? What are you here for? What's your purpose? And again, for men, because it is Men's Mental Health Month, we are rooted in our purpose. Right?
But I'm sure there's some men that don't know what their purpose is. They're just used to a mundane lifestyle, very sedentary lifestyle, earning a salary, not ambitious, just content, and what have you. So, men in situations like that, how do they deal?
But that's why curiosity is so important.
But some people are just naturally not that curious.
Well, it gets to a point.
Difficult, as sad as it is to say.
Yeah, sometimes the truth is you can't really force anyone to go out there to be something. But everyone at a certain point in life now realize what's my purpose, and some of them now go out there, do the research, do the work.
So you have to get to a stage where
you have to motivate yourself and tell yourself, I'm going to, And sometimes they now come in for therapy, and that's where we now help them. We do some assessments with them, find out their strengths, find out their weaknesses, find out what occupations they are good at, what aspects of life, they would thrive in, and try to channel them in that aspect. So I tell people you don't need to do it alone. That's why you have professional therapists. So you come in and we help you assess it. We have different assessments to carry out on people.
Okay, but like the last question now. Yeah. Some wives don't even know what their husbands are going through, or some partners don't even know what they're...
Facts.
So sometimes in your course of therapy, both of you, in talking to people, do you encourage them to sometimes bring their spouses with them?
We do.
And have you noticed whether sometimes when they're with their spouses, they are less hesitant to talk?
Well, yes, that's very right. We do relationship counseling. And we tell people, probably it's the man that came in first, or maybe the woman came in first. We are like, because we understand you guys are married or in a relationship, and your actions will affect him, and his actions will affect you. So we try to see both couples together. But at that instance, there's some restriction. There are some things he will not want to say in front of his wife. So what we do is we break it down into different sessions. The first one will be a couple therapy session. The next one will be individual, where you come alone, and you tell us everything, you bare your mind. He also has the opportunity to come in, bare his mind. But of course, there's confidentiality. So there are certain things you tell me, and of course, you tell me not to share with him.
Exactly.
And I won't,
so how do you...
But in such instances, we know how to channel the questions to the other person without even saying it that your wife said this or your husband said this. So that's where we help people. We always encourage people to come in with their partners, because it makes the healing a whole lot easier. If we find out that your wife is actually the one causing more of the stress, then we try to make her see the reason.
Let me ask Shane one last question. Since you've taken on this path, have you gone out of your way to encourage your friends to speak more, and have you found them opening up to you?
Yes, I would say that it's almost a mission for me. When you talk about purpose, this is my purpose. My purpose is in the message of wellness. It's in educating people, educating myself, educating people that are seeking help, looking for help. So yes, I have a very close group of friends that we have been friends for 40 years. All guys. And yes, it's important we stay connected. We created a WhatsApp group where we literally check on each other as often as possible. I encourage it. I have a radio show on Wellness Radio Show, I speak about that through the work that I do, speaking to organizations, through our EAP service, which also extends to families as well. So it's not just the employee, but their household. Because work-life,
emotional affairs and stuff.
Work-life balance is very important. So it's all I do. I'll write, I will speak, I will sing, whatever I need to do to continue to speak about this message, I will.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much, Maje. Thank you so much, Mfon, for this very open discussion that we've had, and we hope that it will encourage a lot of men who have watched this episode to take the right step in the right direction, and probably visit you guys as and when needed.
We'd love to have you.
If you're a man struggling right now, or you love one who is, you're not alone, as you can see. And to every man suffering in silence, there's no shame in your struggle. Healing is not a straight line. And vulnerability That's not the opposite of strength. It's the foundation of it. Please seek help. Start with one word, one person, one breath. That's all we have time for today. You've been watching Perspectives here on Arise News with me, Ruth Osime. Until next week, goodbye.